when we learned about Weston A. Price, that was awesome because paleo is great, but it's a little bit more restrictive in the sense of like, no dairy for anyone. And we got to thank Weston A. Price. Like, remember I don't remember what year it was, but they had that study that they did on those lactose intolerant population, and they found that the raw dairy in that population, I think it was like 70 or 80% of them had no reaction to raw dairy. So we started adding raw dairy, fermented foods. We started doing kombucha. And remember, you and I, like, we felt really good. But when we added that, we were like, wow, this is the best we've ever felt.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. Trying to fuel our families well in a world full of fast food, ho-hos, and sodas isn't easy. Heck, it's not really easy for those of us who are full-fledged adults, is it? Well, this is episode 249, and our guests today are Maura and Danny Vega. Danny has his Master's of Science in Human Performance from the University of Florida. Maura is a classically trained dancer who inspires her followers to take their fitness to the next level. Together, they are the dynamic duo of the Fat Fueled Family podcast, and they are a wonderful team to lead the way in raising our children well and helping them thrive for a lifetime of success. On today's podcast, which is the first in a 6-week parenting series, Danny and Maura cover how to eat ancestrally on a budget, what their family's must-have foods are, what they think of today's snack culture for kids, and how their children navigate peer pressure when their food doesn't look as normal as everybody else's. Before we get into the conversation, a quick shout out to our sponsors. First off, I want to let you know the Wise Traditions Conference is on. It's this November the 13th to the 15th in Atlanta, Georgia. Join us for several days of excellent speakers, nourishing food, and real wisdom. The conference theme is Staying Healthy in a Toxic World. That sounds great to me. So sign up now to take advantage of early bird pricing. Just go to wisetraditions.org. Oh, and if for some reason we have to cancel the conference, you are entitled to a full refund. So move forward and fear not. See you in November. Again, this is a reminder that every week we are going to post one additional podcast with a special emphasis this summer on parenting. This is not the only way we want to support you parents. If you are looking for support on how to nourish your children and yourself, join the Nourish Children 2.0 and Nourish 2.0 groups on Facebook for one donation of only $5 for the calendar year. Nourishing Our Children is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Danny and Maura.
We're so happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
You are known as the Fat Fueled Family. Tell me, has it always been like this? You've always fed your kids kind of ancestrally?
Actually, yes. For us, it's kind of unique, but Danny and I, we're keto now, but it all started with paleo back when I gave birth to my first son. So yeah, he was the paleo baby. He did not have anything. I think the first time he had a French fry was maybe when he was 2 or something.
Wow. So from the beginning, you were nurturing him well, even when he was in the womb.
Yes. So with Desmond, honestly, my diet when I was pregnant with him it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't paleo or anything like that. I was actually coming from a vegetarian background. And so when I got pregnant with Desmond, I had never had such a strong craving for steak, honestly. And I just listened to my body, my doctor, but I was eating meat plus, rice and beans and kind of just whatever I wanted. But then, I did gain a lot of weight. So I did start paleo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I had him, and I was nursing him exclusively. So that's when we started researching.
And did you say you came across the Weston A. Price Foundation too when you were having one of your kids?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So once Desmond was starting to eat, it was time for him to start eating. And I had already been paleo for that whole year. We started feeding him around 6 months. I started to offer him food. We were already deep into our research by that point. So we had found the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I had found Sarah Pope on her YouTube, which was awesome. And she was talking about first food for babies. So yeah, my little Desmond, he was eating soft-boiled egg yolks with liver, raw liver as his first food, grass-fed meats, bone broths, all the things.
Yeah, and when we learned about Weston A. Price, that was awesome because paleo is great, but it's a little bit more restrictive in the sense of no dairy for anyone. And we got to thank Weston A. Price. Like, remember I don't remember what year it was, but they had that study that they did on those lactose intolerant population, and they found that the raw dairy in that population, I think it was like 70 or 80% of
it was
no,
it was over 70.
Yeah, no reaction to raw dairy. So we started adding raw dairy, fermented foods. We started doing kombucha. And remember, you and I, we felt really good, but when we added that, we were like, wow, this is the best we've ever felt. It was really, really cool. Unfortunately, we backslid in 2013. I started to powerlift, and because I was doing CrossFit before, and the powerlifting crowd is doesn't really care about food quality, doesn't really care about keeping sugar down and processed foods, and so we were doing carb cycling, and Maura was my wife is the best because we do everything together, and so I proposed something to her. She thinks it over. Most of the time she goes with it. And this time, that whole year or two, maybe a year or two that we did, 2 years that we were just eating that way, she was like, this doesn't feel right. I'm not eating enough fat. I don't feel good. My mind is not right. And when we came back, it was in the keto, keto was starting to gain popularity. So we felt really good about keto. And she's like, she inherently knew that this is where she needs to be. She has to have the fat high. The only thing that we did, again, kind of leave our roots and eventually came back to was this whole, the whole thing. I was trying to explain paleo and Weston A. Price and keto to a friend yesterday. And paleo's all focus on food quality. Weston A. Price, same food quality, traditional preparation, all of those things. And keto is focusing on keeping sugar down and keeping the carbs low. Now, you can do that within a paleo Weston A. Price framework, and that works. Right. But if you're having Diet Cokes all day and regular mayonnaise with canola and all of these processed foods that what people call dirty keto, we just found that we didn't feel as good, and so we just love that idea of combining paleo, Weston A. Price, and keto. And there may be times when we eat more carbs, but I'll tell you this, what I love about Weston A. Price is that everybody can get on board with this. People who say, I don't want to cut down on these, I have a squash garden, or I have all these things that I want to keep eating. And if we can just get to that point where we're just like the whole deep nutrition, Dr. Kate Shanahan stuff, like just eating meat on the bone, traditionally prepared foods, broths, all of those things, I think that we can gain a lot more traction that way, because it makes the tent so much bigger.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the Weston A. Price Foundation likes to do just what you said, Danny. We like to say everybody can eat this traditional way, regardless of their particular diet emphasis. Even vegetarians are welcome to join us by eating more fermented foods, including more salt in the diet, and so on. In other words, there are ways in which they can live these principles because they're beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely. I even love, the inclusion of even people who don't want to stop eating grains. Okay, we actually have it on our list for one of the projects that we want to do with our boys. Is they've really been asking to make sourdough bread. We've been wanting to make our own for years, but it's a process. So we started with kombucha. So we did our during quarantine. I was like, what, since we're home, let's make let's do this as a project. So there's just, it's all about the way we prepare our food and the quality of it, really.
Absolutely. Now you're talking about your boys. How old are they now?
9 and 6.
So are they ever like, but wait, I want to eat the gummy fruit roll-ups that my friends have? Talk to me about how it feels for them to live and eat so ancestrally in a world that's not doing so.
Well, I'll start, and then whatever I miss, you'll just kind of fill in. So I will say that, we know our sons very, very well because of the amount of time we spend with them. So I'll tell you a little about Desmond, our oldest. He's 9 years old. He has a very strong sense of justice justice. He has a very strong sense of following a set of principles. So he is confident in what he does. So like, he does sometimes get ridiculed by kids, like, what are you eating? Because when we would send him off to the homeschool co-ops, we always prepare a really nice lunch for him. Like a fast food one would be like quote unquote fast food would be like siete wraps, like the almond flour wraps with like a chicken quesadilla and maybe some nuts and some fruit. We have to be careful. Some of those groups are not, they have nut allergies. They don't say anything about gluten. You could eat all the bread you want, but don't bring any nuts in there.
I've sent him, jerky, bacon, all types of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I will say that they, of course, are humans. And Desmond, he'll say, I want to have some mac and cheese, so like last week we bought him some gluten-free mac and cheese. But these are things that we don't really do often. These kids, for the most part, they eat the same thing every day. This morning, Desmond had fried eggs and Dean had scrambled eggs with bacon crumbles, and for the most part they eat the same thing now. Halloween, they eat their candy.
They go ham.
Candy. The year before last, I don't think he barely ate any candy. Last year he picked 3 and he sold us the rest.
I always offer to buy it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So go back to that story when he's at school or at the homeschool co-op, he's got his little lunch and the kids are kind of giving him a hard time.
Yeah, this is so funny. There was a girl that, I love it when he tells this story. So he goes, Papi, I was at, the thing today, and this girl, she's like, looks at my food and she's like, that's not healthy. And he's like, do you know what she had, Papi? You know what her lunch was? He goes, a cupcake. A cupcake, like you said it like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, he just says, I've always taught him, I said, Bubby, never judge people, never, proselytize. If people ask you, you can answer the question and all that stuff, but don't try to beat people over the head with like, this is how you should eat. Always share your own experience. He's like, well, you know what? This is what makes me feel good. And he's very like strong and confident in who he is, which I love. Dean, doesn't really have those types of interactions yet.
Yeah.
But, it does get annoying sometimes, because he's a homeschooled kid. He eats differently. So, I told him, look, you're going to be different than a lot of kids growing up. And you have to be okay with that, So, it does get weird. Sometimes kids will say things like, oh, you're homeschooled. You're not going to do anything when you grow up. Really weird, mean stuff for no reason.
They can't say that anymore because now they're all homeschooled.
Oh, now Maura, tell the story of when you guys were coming back from a trip like to Puerto Rico, I guess. And when you came back, I guess you were saying the kids had actually gotten into some food that isn't normally what you feed them. And how did they respond? How did their bodies respond?
Yeah. So Danny and I, we left the boys. We had a really good year that year when it came to travel. We had all these trips planned. And so, yeah, we were gone for a few days. Puerto Rico, we didn't really, when it's with family, like I'm not gonna go crazy. Like, here, just do what you can.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was probably fast food every day. And even though they were still having some of it with us, it was definitely not as often because we always would start our day, like breakfast has to be savory. It just has to be fatty and salty. Like that's like one of the rules we have. Like you cannot start your day with something sweet. It's the worst thing you could do to yourself. You're going to, drive those cravings and hunger. So yeah, we get back. Dean his behavior is just off the chain. He has some sensory issues. So he gets really, really like the excitatory, very, some of the behaviors, they become just very intense. And then also his skin, he had really bad eczema where he would just release and then he's scratching because he's a kid, so they scratch themselves until they bleed, and then Desmond, poor thing, he's got horrible environmental allergies and the nosebleeds were constant. Like,
and also he had the
he had the inhalers at that time. He hasn't used one in years at this point, but which goes to show how powerful the food is. But yeah, so they were a hot mess, but it's mostly Desmond because Dean was very little at that time, so he just became by association. He started, low carb, which is fine. But Desmond, is older, and Danny's always doing experiments. The kids are watching, so we're huge. Like I said, model the behavior. That's how you start. You have to model the behavior you want to see. So we were like, Desmond, you want to just do an experiment? Because he doesn't like the nosebleeds. Anyone who's suffered with nosebleeds, they know it's an issue. It lasts. It's horrible.
Oh, really?
Gushing.
It is the amount of blood. It's always ridiculous. It's a lot. And then it can last up towards half an hour sometimes, where my kid is literally just there like gushing blood from his nose for half an hour. and it does not stop.
He's trying to play with a friend, and all of a sudden the nosebleed comes on. So what was the experiment? What did it look like?
Interestingly, I just want to add to that, like when we've gone to KetoCon and these keto conferences and brought them along, these keto junk foods, like these packaged foods, they have the same effect. Like they
same
brought
effect.
The bleeding back on. So it was like interesting to see that. But Desmond said, I want to do a 3-day experiment of carnivore, like just meat. And I was like, okay. And so day 2, he's like, I want to do 5 days now. And I was like, why don't you do this? Why don't you just say you're going to eat, ketogenic, and he kind of knows, this kid knows so much about nutrition. Like he knows a lot, which I love. And after the 3rd day, these kids were basically eating keto. Dean, there was a little bit of pushback, but really like the most important thing is that we got rid of any type of thing that was in the house that we considered junk. And we just simply told them, listen, we used to think this was food, and we learned that it's not food. And so we're not going to buy it anymore. And I think there was initially some pushback, but after like the 3rd day or so, I'll never forget, Mauda came home with a bunch of sprouts, big bags of sprouts. And Dean was like, Mommy, can I have turkey and cheese? And like he started to eat that stuff. He started to crave it. And now,
Because he's really hungry.
yeah, these kids, like he's actually experiencing hunger. So we tell parents all the time, like, don't be afraid of them experiencing hunger. These kids are so well fed.
And you're not starving them. You're offering meals.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just not hungry enough. You know what I mean? So, and the snacking too, that's a problem.
Oh my gosh, I feel like in this country, we snack so much. We eat like 7 meals a day.
Yeah.
And the minute the kid says, I'm hungry, the parent's like, okay, here's some crackers with peanut butter or whatever. But they're kind of feeding that cycle, right?
Yeah, I'm very outspoken. So like I take huge issue with stuff like this. And so what was it? I sent Desmond, it was a camp or something. And I don't know, he was only going to be there for 1 to 2 hours. And they emailed me like, oh, you didn't send him a snack. And I'm like, yeah, no, he just ate. Like he usually is fine, But of course, since he was the only one who didn't have a snack, I started sending him a snack, of course. But it's just like these kids, it's a 1-hour class. Like, what do you need a snack for?
Yeah. And you see how it manifests itself like over and over again, because you see these kids, they're hooked already.
But you do, when you're eating that many carbs, you do need the snack.
Of course,
that's the thing.
Right.
You'll eat something, and in an hour you'll be hungry again. Like sometimes we're just like, you know what? We don't have like traditional like sit down and eat dinner. We kind of do, but it's not always.
I would like to.
I would like to more for sure.
I'm like, honestly, I would like to.
It's just that, we're not always hungry at the same time, and we actually really value them relying on their hunger signals.
Mm-hmm.
So like, one of the biggest things is like, oh, it's lunchtime. Well,
Yeah.
Why is it lunchtime? Because it's 12 o'clock and that's what people say. Like sometimes my kids are too busy to eat right now and they're not hungry, and I'm okay with that, So we just kind of keep that at the forefront, just allow them to follow their hunger. And the cool thing about it is that in 3 years of these kids eating this way, they've started to create their own list of non-negotiables, which we always tell people, like, you should have non-negotiables, and you and your partner should agree upon that list.
Right.
So that at the very least, if both parents are not on the same page, at the very least you can say, okay, we're not going to do food dyes, we're not going to do grains, especially wheat, and we're not going to do like processed sugars. And that also takes care of processed foods, because most of the time they have all of those things, so it makes it really easy. But Desmond, for example, I'll tell you another story. We've told this story a few times. Like after eating this way for about a year, we went to Miami. We went to a birthday party. Right when he got there, like instantly, pizza, cotton candy, and like Sunkist or something like that.
Yeah, like Fanta, like the orange drink. Oh my gosh!
And literally 20
And
to
we were
30
like,
minutes
buddy,
later,
go
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah, he was doubled over on the couch. He was crying. He felt terrible, and he's like, I wish I never ate that. And I said, listen, remember this feeling, and the next time you're presented with this, you won't do it again, And the same thing, he feels terrible when he eats cake. He's like, I don't like cake.
But why don't regular kids eating a conventional diet, why don't they feel terrible when they eat cake? Or do they, and do they just not notice?
I'm glad you asked that, because I was literally just thinking that it is different. And when we don't eat that stuff, we do react worse. But I actually like that, because I think what it is like when the kids who are eating this stuff constantly, they might appear to be okay, but I don't buy it, because I see it. I see the behavior. I see the bags under these kids' eyes.
They don't have energy.
And it's like a low level of inflammation at all times, you know, where that's where those chronic illnesses are going to come in. I'd rather just honestly die if I eat something, because then I know.
Right. It's almost like smokers are so accustomed to smoking, they don't cough.
And they don't smell it.
But if they smoke a cigarette after 7 years of not doing so, they're going to start coughing, right? So it's that kind of reaction that your body
All
has.
those chemicals like that are causing the cough, it should be concerning to you if it stops bothering your body, that your body's okay. I guess the human body's so resilient.
Yeah, we
so
are.
Amazing. And like, that's a problem. So I've heard that, like, oh, you know, you can't eat this way, because then if you eat this way, then if you try to go back, then you're going to feel like crap. And I'm just like, how is that a bad thing? You know,
Yeah.
like, that's a good thing. Like, I always used to say, because I felt this when I went, like when I started this type of diet, and then even more like with keto, like lowering the carbs. And I was like, you know, carbs are background noise. And it's not just carbs, it's the other stuff like the vegetable oils, all of those things. It's all this background noise. And so when you get rid of that background noise, you just become so much more in tune with your body that you're like, I can't believe this, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but man, I have an issue with avocados. And I didn't know that, you know, like, because you can feel, just an example, you know, you can feel these things when you eat them, and you're like, well, now I know that if, you know, Maud always cracks me up because she'll say, like, she can't do onions. She has, I actually was cleaning the office and I saw your MRT food sensitivity panel, and one of them that really hurt her was onion.
Oh.
So I stopped, you know, I started to have to
That
make
one
like
stinks.
our own
Because it's good. I love onions.
She'll say, you know what, is onions the headaches or onions is the...
No, headaches.
Okay. Because she knows, like, each thing that's on that list has a different symptom. And so she'll be like,
I've
well, some of them
tested
is
them.
digestive, something. So she'll say, like, do I have a few days to feel like crap? Maybe I do this time, and I'm going to consciously eat this.
Yeah, and I'll consciously do it.
It's worth it.
Coming up, Danny and Mauda talk about the must-have foods that their family depends on for good health.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Just Thrive Probiotic. Imagine a probiotic that actually does what it is supposed to do. One that survives digestion 100% so it can get to work in your gut. Just Thrive is the first and only 100% spore-based, DNA-verified and tested probiotic supplement. As the subject of groundbreaking clinical trials, Just Thrive has demonstrated incomparable effects on the gut and its undeniable connection to the immune system and brain. Just Thrive strains are clinically proven for leaky gut with 10 additional ongoing human clinical trials. Just Thrive supplies powerful immune system support and also benefits your brain and heart. Just Thrive produces carotenoids and antioxidants such as alpha and beta carotene, lycopene, and lutein. It's a powerful probiotic, plus the most bioavailable form of antioxidants in one. So say goodbye to bloating, gas, leaky gut, and brain fog, and hello to being regular and clear-headed. It's non-GMO, soy-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, salt-free, nut-free, and gluten-free. You take just one capsule of Just Thrive Probiotic daily. You can even open the capsule and sprinkle it on food or in drinks, or bake with it up to 455 degrees. These are the toughest, most effective probiotics you will ever find. Just Thrive is offering right now, you guys, a listener special, 15% off site-wide. So go to justthrivehealth.com today and enter code WISE to learn more and take advantage of this incredible savings opportunity. One use per customer. Again, that is justthrivehealth.com and enter the code WISE to get 15% off your entire order. And Mountain Rose Herbs. You guys, Mountain Rose Herbs are an online purveyor of the highest quality organically grown herbs, spices, teas, essential oils, and botanical goods. I love their focus on sustainability. They offer one of the most thorough selections of certified organic herbs, spices, and botanical products available today. Organics remain their passion regardless of price or profit. They've been around since 1987, and they've made it their mission to provide plant lovers with exceptional organic botanicals harvested with the utmost respect for the places they grow and the people who grow them. Learn more about Mountain Rose Herbs at mountainroseherbs.com. And remember, they have a great variety of products. They sell everything from essential oils, herbs and spices, and teas to culinary ingredients, bath and body care products, and more. So go to mountainroseherbs.com and use the discount code WAPF10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. So I want to pivot for a minute because you talked about non-negotiables. In other words, every family perhaps should have a few things that they're like, these are just things we don't have. What are the absolutely must-haves on the keto list, the family that's eating this kind of high-fat way?
Well, I would say for sure, high quality animal proteins for sure. We literally cannot live without it. It's the cornerstone of our diet for sure. So high quality beef, lamb, fish, anything, all meat, all animal products. What else would you say?
Meats. I would
yeah, organ meats for sure.
Organ meats.
Nose to tail.
You're gonna try my organ meat burgers.
Yes, I can't wait.
Which I'm super excited. I just made a batch last night. So organ meats is just one of those things where you know that you're gonna have your bases covered if you just eat that like at least once a week. And we tend to end up, sometimes we'll say I'll make organ meat burgers and then they'll eat them like for 3 or 4 days in a row, and then we won't eat organs for a few weeks. But like for the most part, we do lots of organ meats. We love stews and bone broth. So I'll take like big old pork butts and I'll make like a big stew with that, and then we'll make a broth with the bone that's in there, and then we'll continue that broth for several days. Fermented vegetables, yeah. We love. The boys love them. They're very adventurous. Like Desmond had the folio cheese wraps. Like that's hilarious.
That's
like,
hysterical.
We were in Ohio for a small event that I was speaking at. And Desmond, being the adventurous kid that he is, have you heard of these folio cheese wraps?
No.
They're basically just cheese, and they're wraps. Like you have to keep them refrigerated.
That kind of sounds good to me already.
It's awesome. Like we used to make them at home, and now we can have them. And so he has this cheese, and he almost eats the whole wrap, and it was attached to the wax paper that it was on. And this kid was like, I guess that's the consistency of this cheese. And here I am trying to try this cheese. I guess this is how this
He
cheese
basically
tastes.
ate a piece of paper. He like an entire sheet of paper. I told you he would eat anything. He's like Danny.
Oh my gosh.
Danny wouldn't notice.
Desmond's like me in so many ways. He's like me in the sense that he loves everything, mostly everything.
He does apple cider vinegar shots. Like he'll ask for it.
Yeah, and that's
because if it's healthy, he'll do it. Like Danny.
That's the other thing. Like he's like me in the sense that like he's proud of the fact that if something's healthy, he'll have it, even if off the bat he doesn't love how it tastes, but he'll have it. So I love that about him, and he's also just I tell him all the time he's a natural born leader because. Again, he doesn't care what people think, and he has a very strong sense of, no, that's wrong. And he's also the type of kid, I'm just going to talk about my son because I love him. He'll see something going on and he'll say, hey, stop doing that. He stands up for that, which I just love about him.
Well, and in our circles, we often say too, more is caught than taught. In other words, it's not that you guys have, told him enough times, we need justice, we need equality, but that you're living out in such a way that he wants to do what he sees you doing, whether it's food wise or otherwise, which I think is commendable for both of you.
Yeah, and he listens to our conversations. People I'm talking on the phone, and we have really good conversations, me and her. We have conversations with friends about important things, and so he's listening to everything.
Yeah, they're always
so
listening.
much so that sometimes I'm like, listen, I can't tell you what this is about. Your brain is not ready.
He always wants to know. He's like, what was that? I'm like,
so it's true. They see that, and we always think back to like even both of these children, like when they were babies, like when we were doing CrossFit, like they were watching us in their little car seat that we would take into the gym, and they would literally watch us as we worked out. And like I remember both of them, they would get brooms in the house and they would do squats, and that's how you foster that environment, like that. Yes, we work out, this is just a part of life. We train, we eat healthy, and this is just what we do. Like that wouldn't work if we we're not strong in our principles and not kind of living this life,
Right. No, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you something. We were talking earlier about kids who might ostracize your children, but I bet there are adults too who are like, man, you guys eat weird. Like, what do you do about that? How do you respond?
It's a little bit easier for Danny and I just because, I work out, we have results. To be honest. So it's a little bit easier for us to deal with that because, a lot of people that come into the keto space, they're on their journey losing weight and they catch a lot of flack when they're at a restaurant eating butter. You know what I mean? If you see me eating butter, you might think it's weird, but you also might be like, well, I guess it works for her. You know what I mean? So
that's sad.
It is a little bit different for us. And honestly, we have caught some, but over the years, our family is so used to our antics, like we've been like this since forever. So our family is just,
boundaries.
And we've set boundaries. Yeah, at the beginning when they wouldn't take me serious, I did have to set some boundaries. Just like, look. And here's the thing: when it comes to like grandparents and stuff like this, they, especially Latin culture, like the way we show love is through food. Eat more, come. Like it's like how we show love. So I think just giving them different options because they're not aware. So I tell my mom, I'm like, instead of this, get them this, like they just really want to give something and feed the child. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe not a donut, but you know what? A really good piece of chocolate, my kids will do it. And they don't even know about it. You know what I mean? They just they weren't aware of that option. Or, hey, look at these grain-free crackers that you can get for your house if you want to give my kid crackers, stuff like that.
Yeah. And then Maura, unfortunately, has always been the suffer in silence type. Like God put me on earth to protect my wife and to set boundaries for her. So I was the one who's always like, listen, you're not going to see your grandkids. You will not see them. I love you,
hardcore.
But you will not see your grandkids if you undermine us. You had your part, you did your job. My dad, I remember like when we started to tell him all the things that we were going to do different than he did, even though I loved how they raised me, I think it worked well for me. He's like, well, you turned out fine, and I'm like, listen, I get it.
Yeah.
I turned out fine, but I want better. I want more. I want to go deeper.
Just like they did, I always try to remind my mom of that too. I'm like, look, just like you would tell me that you're doing better than your parents, that's all we're doing. Because, sometimes I think we do get defensive. Like, it's not an attack on you. You did the best you could with the information you had. And now I know new information and I'm just doing what I'm sure my kids are going to do the same.
Right. And it's new information and yet it's old, which is why we call this
new, but not really.
show Wise Traditions, because it's really hearkening back. And it could be with your parents. I don't know. It definitely worked with mine when I would say to them, look back at the caldos you would, have growing up, or, la sopita que hacía la abuela de la esquina, and so it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And so it's kind of cool because we're not just saying we have something modern that's better, but we have something ancient that we're bringing back. So as we start to wrap up, I just have two final questions. One is, when you're talking about all these meats and stuff, you guys, and these like special cheese wraps, like it kind of sounds pricey. Is it hard to eat this way on a budget?
I would say that we do spend on our quality, but it doesn't have to be like that. Like we always tell people, if you have to choose, I'd rather you choose the best meat you can get instead of
Like you
bread.
can afford. Yeah.
Right. The best meat you can afford. Now, Danny and I choose to not spend in other areas because we would prefer to spend it on high quality food. So I wouldn't really compare everyone to my family because I also have boys, which they eat so much. Yeah. Between Danny and my two boys, they, it can get pricey, but I feel like it can all get pricey. I mean,
well, we don't snack as much, so that's
we don't snack as much, so we
don't
save
throw
there.
Out a ton of produce like everybody else does. We conserve as much.
We
as
buy in
possible.
bulk.
Yep, we buy in bulk. So all of those things are and we don't eat as frequently. So
we don't eat out either.
Yeah, we barely eat out. We love cooking at home, and if we eat out, it's going to be a Brazilian steakhouse every single time.
And that would honestly, sorry to interrupt you, but that would be my argument, is that most people who may think that this is a pricey lifestyle, I 100% challenge them to add up all the eating out they did, because we used to do that, and I did that one month and it was over $1,000, and that was like Chipotle, like cheap stuff.
Oh
so
my gosh,
it
adds up.
It adds up, guys. So I might spend quote unquote a lot on groceries, but I'm not eating out literally ever.
Yep.
Well, these are some good words about how to kind of cut corners, but not cut corners on your health.
Yeah.
You've got to make some choices, some intentional choices about how you're spending your money. I love how you guys are doing it, and I can't wait to eat. So let's wrap things up. If the listener could do one thing to maybe take a step in the direction of feeding their children more ancestrally, what would you recommend that they do? You can each take a turn answering.
First, if you are living at home and your partner's with you, if you're not, then you still have to come to this agreement. You got to get on the same page, parents. I think that's the first step. And then once you do that, then you have to say, what are we going to get rid of in this house? Like, what are going to be non-negotiables? Because that's the quickest thing. Think about it. Like, if my kids want bread, good luck. There's no bread.
They can
in
go
the
look
house.
for it. Go find it.
Like I have parents. We have parents all the time that tell us, well, my kid just wants to eat Cheetos and all this. I'm like, who's buying the Cheetos? Stop buying the Cheetos. Oh, they got into the Doritos again. Like, why are there Doritos in your house? Got to get rid of that. That's the most important thing. Get rid of it right now. Donate it if you have to. And you'll see just from there, you'll start to, it's crazy. They're going to go to the cupboard. they're going to go to the pantry and they're going to look over and over until they, because the habit is there. But once they realize that there's nothing there, then they're going to be like, oh,
let's go to the fridge.
Yeah, time to go to the fridge, time to find, whatever leftover meat is there. Or just they'll say, can I have a snack? And I'm like, no, because I'm making you food. So we'll eat food.
Oh, I love it. What about you, Maura?
So mine would actually be to involve them in the process.
Oh, that's huge, yeah.
Get them in the kitchen. Yes, it might be messier, but now's the perfect time. Everybody's home a little bit more right now with their kids. Get them involved, show them the process. Kids are always going to be more adventurous to try something if they helped make it. So, and then it's a great opportunity for education. Education is huge. They're not going to want to do something if they don't know why, if you just tell them. That's our human nature. Humans don't want to be told what to do. So get them involved. Yeah.
I love it. You guys, thank you so much for this time. I love talking to you.
Likewise.
I love
thank
it.
you.
Our guests today were Danny and Maura Vega. Visit their website, fatfueled.family, to check out their podcast and other resources. Oh, and a quick note. Danny and Maura talked today about almond flour tortillas, and we just want you to know that the Weston A. Price Foundation suggests that all nuts be properly prepared before consuming, and it's quite likely that the nuts used for most tortillas are not. So just a word to the wise, you can learn more about the proper preparation of nuts, seeds, beans, and legumes on next week's Wise Traditions podcast. And I'm Hilda Labrada Gore. You can find me at holistichilda.com. For the show notes for this and every podcast episode, just visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. Before I say hasta pronto, which means see you soon, I want to read to you a recent review on Apple Podcasts. Big Dog Fan says, so thankful. I'm so thankful I found this podcast and the Weston Price Foundation. I'm confident it's a vital key to good health. I've listened to about 70 episodes in recent months, and I've learned so much. I gladly share it with friends, and I pray this message will continue to spread. Thanks for making this possible. Big Dog Fan, it was our pleasure. Feel free to write a review of your own and leave it on Apple Podcasts so we can read it on a future episode, possibly. And please submit any letters to the editor to our email team. You can find that information on our website as well. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care of yourself y hasta pronto.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.